Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. I am Shaneri as a health center. I am joined tonight with Natasha Reid of Rhema Counseling Services. We are here tonight to talk about stress management and self-care. So I'm really excited about this topic tonight because I know this is a topic that affects so many people and including myself. So I think this is going to be, yes, right, all of us. We're all going through it right now, especially with the pandemic. So again, thanks so much for tuning in. I've included some resources, some mental health resources in the chat window there, as well as some information on how to get in touch with Natasha. But without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Miss Natasha Reid. So Natasha is a licensed clinical social worker, first obtaining a bachelor degree in sociology from the University of Maryland Eastern Shore and a bachelor's of social work from Salisbury State University. She continued her education at the University of Maryland, Baltimore, where she earned a master's in social work. She later began work as a psychotherapist. Both Natasha and her husband, Orly Reid, established Rhema Counseling Services, a mental health agency that services individuals, children, and families with a focus on empowering people to overcome life struggles. In addition, Natasha has recently authored the spiritually grounded book, Girl, Get Your Mind Right. It is an amazing book. I started reading it a couple of weeks ago, and I'm definitely going to be taking some excerpts from the book. So definitely tune in for that. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I know we have a few more people coming in, but you know what, Natasha, I forgot your book in the other room, so I'm going to go grab that. But I did want to definitely get things rolling. So give me just a second.
Yes, ma'am.
Right. So we're going to let a few more people come in. I know we've got a number of participants that are interested in tonight's topic. So I do want to go ahead and get started on the subject of mental health. I know that has been kind of a hot button topic or kind of ongoing issue that a lot of people talk about. But, what is mental health? Like, what does it exactly mean, right? And why is it so important? So, as a healthcare provider, I definitely deal a lot with medical conditions and issues, chronic disease. And, what a lot of research has consistently found is that a lot of chronic illnesses and diseases have a foundation of being related to stress. So stress-induced conditions, even for instance, physical manifestations of stress like fibromyalgia. I'm sure a few individuals in the audience have probably heard of that, but a lot of these pain-related issues are even treated with antidepressants, right? So it's really important to understand kind of the correlation between our general health, our physical health, as well as our mental and emotional health. So Natasha, kind of give me your thoughts on, what is it to be mentally well and what is mental health?
Well, first, let me say thank you for having me. And I have to say, I love the way you pronounce my name because most people don't get it right. So you always say it correctly.
Yes. Well, I have a different type of name too, so
Right.
I try to do
Okay.
my
So we
best.
understand each other.
Yes, I got you.
So thank you. But yeah, mental health is pretty much the hallmark of life. It impacts everything. And it's generally your mental, emotional, and social well-being. So this means everything connected to how we think, how we feel, and how we act, how we behave.
Right. So again, coming back to how everything kind of correlates, how We think our emotional well-being definitely manifests in how we interact with others, how well we are able to perform in our jobs, and how we're able to kind of function from day to day.
Yeah.
So stress has been, definitely a big part of that. I know with this pandemic, we've seen even higher levels of stress, higher levels of, even alcoholism and physical abuse, emotional abuse. I mean, down the line, when you now have this, major national health crisis, compounded by economic, issues and distress, as well as the social issues, right? So you're having
Right.
all of these elements kind of happening all at the same time. It's just
Right.
a lot to take in for a lot of people. Even the best, most mentally and emotional strong person can
Yes.
have a real problem with it. So in your practice, like what have you seen, and what are the things that you've come across?
Well, there is, you know, you've heard a lot of people say, especially professionals, that we are experiencing more than one pandemic. And so the depression, anxiety is off the charts. So it's really affecting everyone. So I'll start with the youngest. The kids are out of school. They're not having their social interaction that they have with their friends, and so they're experiencing depression and anxiety. And some of them are even having some separation, issues because now we're telling them, let's go back to school. And, they've been with their parents for over a year. And so,
Right,
what do you mean it's time to go back to school? So, you're having
right.
those issues. And then you have the adolescents whose lives have been disrupted. I have a almost 12-year-old, I have a 16-year-old, and I have a 19-year-old. So, my 19-year-old missed his whole first year. He missed he missed half of his senior year. So he was home for half his senior year. So he went to college. Thank God he got to have that experience, but that was a major transition for him. My 16-year-old missed his entire sophomore year. He only got half of his freshman year. These are major transitions. My
Right.
youngest went into middle school this year. He's doing his first year in middle school at home. So the kids are
Ah,
really having a difficult time with what normal is.
right.
And then they're missing their friends. So a
Absolutely.
lot of anxiety, a lot of depression. And then you have those of us that are working and responsible for the families. So that stress is, work. Those who were, frontliners who had to go out in the midst of the pandemic and continue to work. So it was a
Right.
lot of anxiety surrounding that.
Yeah.
And then you have everyone losing loved ones or in fear of losing loved ones. So you
Mhm.
have the anxiety and depression that's centered around that. And then you have those who are professionals, physicians who are in the hospitals and in their practices, and they're having to, deal with seeing death
Right.
at a rate that they aren't even used to.
Right.
The funeral workers, so every area of life, the grocery workers, let's not forget the mail, postmen and Amazon and delivery people. Everyone is dealing with a level of work and stress, and inaccessibility and isolation that we
Mhm.
have never had to encounter before. So there are, of course, marital issues going on. People are in the house longer
Yes,
than they've
I've
ever
heard.
had to be together.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's get to know your spouse a little bit more during
Right.
this
And some
time.
people feel like we're getting to know each other too much.
Yeah.
So,
Like the separation time is, yeah, definitely it can be
yeah.
challenging for sure. Now, Natasha, I know a lot of your background is in adolescent mental health as well. And something that you just mentioned about, seeing depression in kids. Now, that is something that I know we as adults, we think, oh, depression is only affects us as adults, right? We don't think about like signs of depression in children. Like, what are some of the key signs we should be looking for with kids who may have anxiety or depression?
So depression in kids does not always look like it looks in adults. So they may not want to do some of the things that they used to do. They may start to isolate. They also may want to eat more. They may lose interest in some of the things that they used to have interest in. They may become more clingy, um, as opposed to, letting mom and dad do their own thing. Now they want to know what you're doing, where you're going, that sort of thing.
Mhm.
Fear, fear, unnormal fear, abnormal fear, where they may be fearful of going to the grocery store. Things
Mm.
that they used to didn't, flinch about. Now I don't want to do these things anymore. And then the characteristic things of, they don't take care of their hygiene. Now, sometimes that's hard to distinguish because teenagers, especially boys, can sometimes be a little challenged in that area. But it's really looking for the abnormals is what they're
Right.
looking for. And so that can look very different. And for a lot of adolescents right now, it has been being extremely withdrawn, procrastinating,
Hmm.
um, not doing their schoolwork, not logging on to school at all,
Mm.
um,
Right.
being forgetful is what it looks like as well. And so you really have to pay attention, and I know it's been really hard for everybody, but the parents are working and everybody's simultaneously trying to do what they're supposed to be doing. But the children need a lot more attention than they are used to getting. And one of the ways I thought about it was my kids, when they're at school, they have supervision 24, the whole time they're at school.
Mm.
But when we're at home working, they don't have, they're sometimes, we're in the house, but they
Right.
don't have supervision.
Very true. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
so, so I had to
Exactly.
consciously say to myself, engage them, have conversations, make sure you're touching them
Mm.
because we're literally now the only physical touch they get.
Right. That's
We're the
true.
only conversation that they're getting. So making sure that you're engaged.
That you're engaged. Right. Okay. So yeah, I mean that's something that is so important because I know there's been incidences of even children harming themselves. I even heard earlier in the school year in one of the local schools about a child that took his life. Again, just trying to adjust with all that's going on, the depression and anxiety. So it's so important that we as parents remain engaged
Yeah.
and really observant about changes in behavior in our children.
Right.
So another thing that we talk about, what I touched upon earlier is kind of like the physical manifestations of stress. There's even a medical term called psychosomatic symptoms, which are basically mental and emotional issues that manifest themselves physically.
Right.
So, having being anxious, having being under a lot of stress, you do, experience things like higher levels of pain, difficulty with sleep, loss or gain of appetite, uh, fatigue, loss of focus. I mean, the list goes on. And it's so important that we do kind of recognize these signs before we reach what we call burnout, right? So,
Right.
God forbid you have go through a cardiac event or a stroke. I mean, it really can progress to that level if you go long term without addressing it. So, in your experience, what are some key kind of things to watch out for when it comes to burnout, which is a term that is kind of loosely used. But what are things that would uh, kind of be the red flags that we have to
Mm-hmm.
watch out for before we get to that point?
Right. So, um,
Yeah.
going back to stress, stress is essentially pressure, and it's pressure on your mind, your emotions, and your body. And it shows up, as you were saying, in so many ways. And the first thing we need to do is pay attention to our body. our body will signal to us that there's a problem. It's that yellow light before we even get to the red light. So headaches, having headaches, um, back pain is a common one. Stomach pain is a common one. So upset stomach,
Right.
especially in smaller kids, that seems to be where anxiety gets lodged for them, is in their stomach. So they'll complain a lot of, my stomach hurts. And so that's really what's going on.
Kind of a key symptom there. Yeah.
Right. Rashes, skin issues, eczema. And these can be things that are pre-existing, but as you stated earlier, the stress is impacting it. So it's exasperating it.
Right. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And so just a short fuse altogether, your tolerance level is lower.
The irritability and moodiness, mood shifts. Yeah.
All of that.
Yeah. So it's so important that we pay attention to these things. And one thing that I found is that, when you're stressed out, when you're feeling anxious, a lot of people tend to keep it all inside and bottled up. And they don't tell anyone that they're struggling. They don't tell anyone that, that they're having these issues or, thoughts or what have you. I just recently had a patient who had been going through a tremendous amount of stress, both at work and home. And she literally broke down because she was expressing all these things to me about what she was going through. And she said that she had never told anybody else. And part of the reason was she felt everyone else probably has their own stressors and things that they're going through. I'm not going to burden them with, my stuff, which I understand, I get, but it really got to a boiling point. Like, it just now started to manifest in all those symptoms that you just mentioned. Like, she literally had the fatigue, the irritability, the mood swings, the insomnia. It really just became very problematic for her. So, she said after she told me, she felt so relieved. It was almost like pressure coming off.
Yeah.
So
and
there is a value.
It is pressure coming off. Literally, you're opening that lid and letting it out.
Right. So there's different ways in which we can kind of relieve stress. So one is, I guess, talking to someone, even if it's just not necessarily seeking a solution, but just getting it out. Is there value in that?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Yeah. Venting is a very, very healthy thing to do.
So venting is a healthy thing to do, you said. Really? Okay. Huh. Because we always think, that's just negative energy, but so it's a good thing to just kind of let it out.
Because it's in there. And sometimes we're so quick to want to make things right. We want to reframe it quickly. And when you do that, you're not acknowledging where you are in the emotion. So where does it go? It doesn't have anywhere to go if you don't acknowledge that it's there in the first place. So venting is a very healthy thing. It's telling you where you are. And once you get it out, now you can go where you want to go. So being able to talk and say, okay, this is where I am. Women are pretty much probably the best at this with their girlfriends, is to be able to say, this is where I am. And, and then if you have good girlfriends, by the end of the conversation, they've helped you kind of turn it around and reframe it. But it is okay to say, this is exactly where I am. And where I am isn't a good place. It's not okay. There's pressure there. I'm irritated with this. I'm frustrated with this. That's healthy.
That is healthy.
Deny it is unhealthy. To stifle it.
Yeah. Right. Because it can manifest in very unhealthy ways.
Absolutely.
So, so that's one strategy, is to talk it out and vent. So venting is a good thing. Hopefully everyone's heard that. It is okay to vent as long as you do it in a productive, non-destructive, non-violent manner.
Right.
Okay,
And
so let's
so
let's
let me
put
just
that.
go into some of the other ways of venting. That, and that's important that you said that. Your solution should never harm someone else. So if you're venting, it shouldn't be turned into volatile, you know, yelling and blaming of someone
Mhm.
else.
Right.
Especially in their presence. It should never be abusive to someone else. That's not venting.
Right. Yes.
That's
So that's
abuse
that's the key. We want to do it in a healthy manner.
in a
Um,
healthy manner. And then also to
absolutely.
write it out, to journal. For the
Mm,
younger people, it may be art, to color, just writing down a
okay.
word, to draw. But we all express differently. So for some of us to say it would be too much. So
Right.
for some
Right.
of us, writing it would be enough. Um,
So
Writing
journaling.
was hard. The journaling
Yeah.
would be
Yeah.
enough. So that's another aspect of um, talking it out. The other thing would
Talking it
be
out.
get physical, move. You know, don't just sit there and let your body become this volcano. Let the tension and the pressure out. So walking, exercise. You know, it can
Hmm.
be as rigorous as you want it to be, or it can be as light as you want it to be. You just need to move. That includes
Right.
stretching. Yeah. Get it
Yeah.
out.
That is so true, and I mean it's really backed by research. One of the best ways to relieve stress is through exercise, movement, getting outside. Enjoying nature. The weather's getting a little nicer now, so
Yes.
getting outside. There's definitely some value in that. It literally decreases stress hormones and increase
Yes.
feel good chemicals in our body, the endorphins, right? So,
The endorphins.
um,
Call it the
right.
happy juice.
The happy juice, yes, yes. So, and exercise, and you may, lose a few pandemic pounds too. So that that's good
Right.
too.
That's a dual
I know,
reward.
I know. That's what I've been working on.
Me too. Me
So,
too. And then
um,
doing something you love for
yes.
sure. Just this weekend, I was feeling a little down. It had been a hectic week. A lot of, clients and, trying to just come back to myself, and then your responsibilities with your family, and then also
Hmm.
your own physical health, making sure you're good, and all of that. And so I was like, oh, okay, what am I going to do, whatever. And so it just came to me, go to the farm and get some flowers, get the deck ready for this season. um, and I actually love to garden. I love flowers, I love
Nice.
plants. And so when
Mm.
I went out and did it, I was like, oh, the fresh air was so nice and beautiful. And when I got out on my deck and I started putting everything out, I was like, I'm only going to do a little bit. I ended up doing the front and the back. But what I
Oh,
realized is that I caught myself smiling. Like there was this joy emanating from the inside that wasn't
mm.
forced. And
Right,
so it's remembering what those things are that trigger
right.
happiness for you. We always talk about what our stress triggers are and what our negative triggers are. What are your
Right.
happy triggers?
I like
Get in
that.
touch with what they are. And when you know what your happy triggers are, you can counteract the stress every time.
Every time. So identifying what it is that genuinely makes you feel good. So it's not going to be like a one size fits all. You just find the activity or hobby or what have you that you genuinely enjoy. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, so we've talked about kind of the positive ways to relieve stress. So the venting, exercise, um, journaling, writing it out, finding a way to express yourself in a positive, non-volatile way,
Yes.
and then doing something that you love. So on the flip side of that, what are the type of things that we should probably avoid when we know we're stressed, when we know that we're kind of nearing burnout? Like, are there any specific activities or type of things we should try to steer clear of?
Yes.
I'm sure
Sometimes
there's
it's
a lot.
easier. Sometimes it's easier said than done, but definitely. And before I go there, as I'm going to go into the things that we shouldn't do or lend our attention to. people sometimes say, well, you shouldn't eat your feelings, but there are times where that's appropriate. So if you're feeling down, dark chocolate is actually clinically proven to boost your mood.
Okay,
Not the
now.
Hershey's, not the cocoa stuff that they do with all the sugar in it, but the pure dark chocolate
Dark
actually
chocolate.
boosts your mood. So picking foods that help elevate, so everything is kind of working in concert together,
Mm-hmm.
it's a great idea. So then we move into what you shouldn't really lend your attention to when you're struggling. Definitely alcohol. Now,
Mm-hmm.
alcohol, a lot of people do socially drink and they use it to relax. Relaxing and drinking to de-stress are two different things.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're drinking to de-stress, you're actually using it as a tool to counteract stress. And we both know chemically that doesn't make sense because
That
the
doesn't. Yeah,
action of alcohol is actually it's a downer.
it's a depressant. Yeah, yeah.
Right. So that's not going to help you. You're going in the wrong direction, and
Mm-hmm.
it lends itself to abuse of the
Mm.
substance because you're
Right,
not getting the effect that you want.
right.
So no
No
alcohol
alcohol. Yeah.
at all.
And
Toxic and toxic relationships and toxic people. So people that bring you stress, um, difficult topics, difficult situations, those need to be avoided as much as you possibly can. Some of our difficult situations live in our home. So you may have to create plans within your home to deal with that. But as much as you
mm-hmm.
can, you try to avoid confrontation and negativity at all costs.
Right, right.
Um, there was one that just went in my mind and went out. So we talked about the alcohol. This is a big one during the pandemic and prior to the pandemic, but especially during the pandemic. Please, 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 if you are dealing with anxiety and depression, steer away from consuming too much news and negative
Mm,
social media.
there you go. Mm, you better preach that. Say that again for the people in the back.
Stay away from the news and negative social media. I have there is a great, I would probably
Mm,
say 60% of the clients that I deal with that have anxiety, that has been one of their treatment plan homework assignments
mm.
because they have been consuming the
So
stories and the
much.
deaths and
Yes.
they can recite it and they're rehearsing it and that's
Mm-hmm.
feeding anxiety, and so it's only
Right.
going to go up and it's going to increase. And it's not that we're in a bubble and it's not that you're ignoring the world. I always say whatever needs to get to me is going to get to me. So if news is an issue for me, if the interstate blows up and I can't go that way, I'm going to know it, whether I'm watching the news or not. Somebody,
Mm-hmm.
some way, some shape or form is going to get to me. I'm going
Yeah.
to have that information. So we
Mm-hmm.
don't need to needlessly just dump within our minds and within our spirits when our container is already full.
It's already full with our own like stressors within our lives. So now we're kind of taking, from
Yeah.
everything else. Yeah, I
Yeah.
know me. I know myself as being an empath, right? So
Me
I will
too.
absorb the pain and suffering of others around me. And it's just, I will carry that weight. So I know I have to like, really protect my peace in
That's
order to
exactly it.
function.
Protecting
Yeah.
your peace. And when you think
Hmm.
about how social media is even constructed, we were never meant to take on 1,000 of our friends' crisis.
Hmm.
So
There you
we
go.
have our crisis, and now every death of our friend on social
Mm.
media, we're now part of it.
And
So
it,
what do you
yeah, and
think
we
that's
absorb
doing
it.
to your mind and your spirit? You are
Hmm.
at capacity. And so you're gonna leak out. You're gonna leak out because it's too much coming in.
Right, right. So it's that is such a big one because I know, especially early on in the pandemic, as we're trying to kind of figure this new way of living out, it's like 24 hours a day, you're like consuming news and what's the latest and what's the newest thing and, what's going on. And you could really get wrapped into it, and
Yeah.
just like you said, you have your own, personal problems. And then now you're thinking about a hundred other different things. There's only so much that you can kind of take on. So yeah, I think that's a big one. I really hope people pay attention to that one in particular. Um, so I know we talked earlier about being able to as we're going through dealing with stress. And well, let me just say this. I guess you can never ever get rid of stress, right? It's not that
No.
we are promoting like totally eliminate stress from your life. That is unreal, unrealistic, not practical, right? So it's about stress management.
Stress
Is that
management.
the best way
Hmm.
to do it? Yeah, yeah. Because there's always going to be levels of stress in our life, and it's just a matter of what things we need to kind of balance out and address
Right.
before it gets out of control.
So you
So,
have those types of there's three types of stress. So they're
three.
acute, which means there's something that just comes upon you. You're walking in the street and a car speeds by you, almost takes your head off. That's acute.
Mm-hmm.
You're
Mm-hmm.
able to kind of, okay, that happened. Woo. And then you have where most people have the issue, is the episodic acute stress, which you
Hmm.
continue to have many crises that just keep popping up.
Back to back. Mm.
Back to back. So the recovery time is difficult, where the stress management piece is so important. And then you have the third type of stress, which is chronic. And that's
Hmm.
where those two, episodic and chronic, is where the diseases are forming and where the mental breakdowns are happening because
Mm.
literally the management isn't keeping up with the stress.
Right, absolutely. So even chemically, there's something going on in your body when you're under stress. So it's the
Yes,
whole fight or flight reaction, right? So when we
yes,
are in a highly stressful situation, we have this high level of adrenaline that's in our system, and it's supposed to help us be prepared to fight it or flee it, right? So fight or
right,
flight. But these chemicals aren't meant to be in high levels in your system for a prolonged period of time. When you have high
right,
levels of adrenaline in your system, that's actually problematic, right?
right. What's
Yeah.
happening is, like you talked about with the stress, when you have that adrenaline in your system, it's lodged there, but it's also triggering other things. So it's
Hmm.
triggering cortisol, which is a stress hormone. And about, like, women get that stress, that cortisol stomach.
The
That's
belly.
all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
it's prolonged. Um, that the deceleration never happened. And so when you keep igniting that fight flight response and you're not coming and letting the air don't speak, you're building up toxins really in your body. And that's where all of those adverse reactions are coming from, is that you now have these runaway hormones in your body that are doing damage.
That are doing damage long term. So, that's when you're going to get like start developing the high risk for heart disease, high risk for stroke, you name it, obesity, gaining
All
weight,
types
and
of
it may not yeah,
yeah, all
yeah,
types
even
of
higher risk for
inflammation.
cancer.
Yes.
Sorry.
No, I was just about to say cancer, which is also linked to the inflammation. All of that, everything in your body is impacted by stress. So anything you can think of is impacted. Your hair falling out is a big symptom.
Mm,
You know,
yeah.
it happens to women a lot. It's stress. Um, eye trouble, not being able to see. All of that is connected to your eyesight getting worse. Again, we talked
Hmm.
earlier about the skin issues, the back issues, the joint issues. All of that is related to infertility. That's a huge one. It's connected to
Infertility.
stress.
Oh, really? Wow. It
Mm-hmm.
can be impacted by stress. So I mean, some major things in the body. Um,
Major.
yeah, and I think that a lot of times we, especially in our society, right? We kind of we glorify in a way having a lot on our plate and
Yes.
doing a million different things at once and being so overwhelmed and being busy. So that is so, almost celebrated in our kind of a workaholic
It's a
society.
badge of honor.
Yeah, and people think that it's actually an okay thing to be stressed out all the time, to be overwhelmed all the time, um, try to take everything on, and we as women especially, oh my gosh, we will carry everyone's weight plus our own and not ask for help,
You know,
not delegate. We'll try
my
to do it
my
all.
my joke is our greetings together when is, hey, I'm tired. Hey, I'm tired. That's our greetings to each other. If we think it's okay to be tired, no one ever really flinches when we greet each other with, I'm tired, when you're asked how you're
Mm,
doing, you know. And if you're
right,
yeah, I'm tired, then you should be resting. And are you
right.
really listening to how often you're saying that? And when you talk about stress, and as you asked earlier about how do we, counteract it, what are you doing to counteract it?
To
It
counteract
has
it.
to be an or right, an organized plan in place, because stress is negative and it's also positive. You can't get away from it because
Hmm,
any type of pressure or challenge that causes us to rise to the occasion. So
right.
driving is stressful. Getting your kids up in the morning can be stressful. Making
Ooh,
the bed can be stressful. And when you put all these things in combination, you are literally being extracted from all day long. So your counteraction has to be that you are implanting all day long
hmm,
in some way, shape, or form, because even if you aren't aware, and even good things are extracting from you. So I
mm,
always liken it to a car. The car's running, it's not running on fumes, it's running on gas. And at some
right.
point, you're going to have to go to the gas station to fill it up. If you don't,
Hmm.
that car is not going to move.
It's gonna stop. Yeah. I
It's
mean,
going to stop.
yes, I've heard it said not every good thing is good for you. So, yes, you probably want to do this and that and, add that activity and that, project, but there is a such thing as too much, right? So
Yeah. Just because you
taking on
can
more.
doesn't mean you should. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, taking on more than you really should. And being okay with saying no, especially if you are the whether you call it a people pleaser or more of like a matriarch taking care of everyone, the what's the word that I'm looking for? The caretaker, nurturer. We all
Yes.
know about the woman that kind of cares. Everyone goes to kind of the mother figure for everyone. And,
Hmm.
she's carrying everyone else's burdens, but no one's asking her, what can I help you with?
Right.
Um, everyone's
Right.
rescuer. And we need to kind of, especially we as women, we need to learn to not always take on that superwoman role.
Put the,
Because we
I
got
was
to
about
save
to say, you
ourselves.
took it out of my mouth. Put the cape away.
Put the cape away. Look, we got to learn how to save ourselves sometimes and say it's okay.
Save ourselves.
Yeah.
And even that, I put that in the book as something in my all the time. when you're on the airplane and they say, okay, the stewardess is going through that exercise. If we ever go down, something happens, you need to put your oxygen mask on first if you have somebody younger traveling. Because if you try to strap them first and you're out passed out in the aisle, this child is still not going to survive. They can't take care of themselves. So in order to take care of everybody around you, you really have to take care of yourself
first.
Because if you're not there to take, if you're not present, you're not well, you can't give anything truly to anybody else.
That is so true. And I think that's something I constantly have to remind myself of, that because I'm the type that will try to do everything and not ask for help and just, pile it on until I'm just exhausted, So, kind of segueing into, how can we be of comfort to others. So, when you have, for instance, a friend or a family member who's going through a stressful time, and you might have your own stresses too, but you may have everything pretty much under control, but you see that, a loved one or someone that you care about is kind of going through and overwhelmed. Like, what are the ways that we can offer help or, be of help to someone who is stressed out?
Mm-hmm. Well, there's several practical ways. One, be an ear. Allow them to talk. And just that. Don't necessarily think that you have to offer resolution or interject. Let them get it out. Let you be a safe place for them to talk. The other way you can help is where you see a need, fill the need. If you know that this is a woman struggling and she's a single mom during a pandemic, or even a family, but especially a single parent, father or mom, because a single father is doing it too, prepare a little extra when you're cooking and go drop off, to help relieve some of the stressors that you may know are there. If you don't know, ask, what can I help you with? So that is a great way to lend support. The other thing is if you really have talked to them and know that there's some deeper issues that aren't appropriate or are not on your pay grade, being able to say to them, hey, I think I'm talking to somebody, have you thought about that? And even maybe even giving them a referral to someone. And then another step is, because a lot of people are reluctant, hey, I'll go with you, or I'll set up the appointment for you. That's a good way to rally and really support someone who is struggling in the moment.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it's always kind of a touchy thing because, no one ever, or many don't want to admit that they're struggling, those who are a little bit prideful and they won't say like they're having a hard time or they're overwhelmed. It's like kind of tiptoeing around, like, how can you just kind of, help these individuals out? So, in keeping with the idea of, the importance of mental health, stress management, and self-care, like, at what point should we seek professional help from, like, a therapist or a counselor or a psychiatrist? Like, is there any key things that we experience or are thinking that would be a reason to actually go seek professional help?
So there's several reasons. One reason can simply just be because you want to. That it doesn't have to be, something, you know, astronomical or detrimental for you to seek out a counselor or a therapist. If simply you want to. There are a lot of people who are in therapy just because they need someone to talk to. And You don't have to have any mental illness per se. You just need
Mm,
somebody else to talk to, a neutral party, someone. It's kind of like, the recipe, set and forget it, that type of thing. I can come there and I can talk and I can leave it there, and it's not looking at me when I get home, and I don't
mm,
have to discuss it with anybody else in my life. So that is
right.
a great way um, to enter into therapy. Some other reasons would be is that you're struggling with some thinking that may be troubling to you. You're having a hard time organizing, putting stress together. You've been figuring out what the issue is. So you may just about ability, some crying, fearful, anxiety, those sorts of things would be a good reason to go talk to someone. Maybe you don't know exactly what it is, and help you talk through it, or a psychiatrist can help you talk through it. If it is impacting your level of functioning, and what it means is you cannot do the things that you used to do. So you can't work, you can't play, um,
Mm,
you can't interact with your family. You're not able to socialize anymore. You can't eat, you can't sleep. Those are reasons to really go and speak to someone. And sleep is a huge one. Usually the first, though, when you're dealing with stress or anxiety or depression or any other type of issue, sleep is one of the first things to go. So if you're not sleeping,
mm.
everything is going to be magnified.
Yes, yes.
You have
There,
to
that
sleep.
is the truth. Yes, sleep is just so important. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Right.
So
And
I
the
think,
last thing
mhm.
is, mhm. Oh, and I was going to
Oh, go
say
ahead.
the
I'm sorry.
last
I'm
thing would
sorry.
be, I was going to say the last thing would be if you're moving, you're going to move there, is if you're harming yourself, and that can be with high risk behavior of all kinds. And you're hypersexual, you can't control your impulse, um, drinking too much, cutting, and thinking about
Mm.
ways to hurt yourself or even others. Your anger is out of control. So those are all excellent reasons to enter into therapy.
Yeah. So I mean, just kind of now to move on to a really sensitive subject, which is, you mentioned about self harm and how a lot of times there may be times where you may have either you yourself as an individual has had thoughts, suicidal thoughts, thoughts of self harm, or even thoughts of harming others. Um, or you may have come across someone who has expressed that they've had these thoughts about harming themselves or killing themselves. I know we earlier in today's program, we provided some resources for the suicide hotline as well as other mental health support lines. But what do we do first as an individual if we do have thoughts of self harm? For one, and two, what do we do? How do we approach a person who expresses to you that they are thinking about harming themselves or killing themselves?
Mm-hmm. One of the first things people try to do is get it out of their mind. And usually that is not the best thing to do, and you really can't do it anyway. But it becomes more of a pestering the more you try to get it out of your mind. So it's the first thing you should do is acknowledge that it's happening. You know, this is really a thought that I am having. Um, and then, begin to ask yourself series of questions. Where is this coming from? Do I feel this way really? Or is this intrusive, meaning it's just kind of coming in without you even thinking about it? And so you ask yourself these questions, and then you need to determine, based off your history, because everybody's going to be coming from a different place, if they're having these thoughts, what your next step should be. And usually it should be someone. It may not necessarily be a therapist. It may be a family member, because you're sharing what's going on with you. You're processing. But you need to talk to someone. Those thoughts don't need to stay in your head, rattling around. You need to talk to someone. And then after you talk to someone, hopefully you will be able to process what your next step is. And your next step will probably be, for most, to enter into some sort of professional counseling, at least. And I also say to people, there's a difference between feeling sad and not wanting to be in the world. I think most of us have had those times where you were like, okay, Lord, just blink me out of here, because you're dealing with a very stressful situation that maybe you don't want to be in. That is different than suicidal thoughts. So you have to explain to people the difference, because they're two totally different paths.
Right.
So
And then yet
suicidal is yeah. Suicidal
And I was
is,
going to say
I
there's
want
even
to kill myself. I physically want to kill myself. As opposed to, I don't want to be here.
I
Now,
see.
I don't want to be here may accompany suicide, but alone it is not suicide.
Right.
You were
And I know
something.
even there's another level when there's an actual attempt,
Yes.
you know, to harm yourself. So that even is in a whole nother level of, you know, seriousness as well.
It's even before that, there is suicidal ideation, and then there is suicide attempt. So suicidal ideation is the thoughts, which is die, I want to kill myself. Suicidal ideation is, I know how. I've thought about how, I have it, and I may even have the means. So you're actually planning. So that, of course, is a whole nother level when you're into suicidal ideation. Now, the attempts are, you know, you may have taken a pill, gotten a prescription, you know, and you're ready. You've purchased a gun, and you are literally preparing. You've taken a I don't even want to go through all the ways that you can, but you have put forth that action. Something has actually happened. And thankfully, we can say that a lot of people we use the term rescued, which means that suicide didn't do what it was intended to do. And that's where we like to be at place. But definitely you have to reach out. One of the things that we often say to people is, especially with the suicidal thoughts, is that just keep talking. As long as you're talking, you are giving your brain the opportunity to rewire. The minute you stop talking, it's stuck. And so the goal is stay engaged. Don't isolate.
Don't isolate.
Keep talking. Let everybody know in your circle that's important what you're thinking, what you're feeling. Because when you can't, they can.
Absolutely. And, you know, it's such a heavy subject, and I think it's something that needs to be talked about. I think people need to know and have the resources. And if listeners, if you look at the chat window, we had posted some information about the suicide hotline and also some other mental health resources. So
Yeah.
we will post it
And I did
again.
want to talk.
Yeah.
I wanted to also say that when you're talking to someone who is suicidal, and let's say you're not a professional, so you don't have any point of reference.
Mm-hmm.
If you think something's up, ask. It's okay to ask. Don't
Hmm.
don't let it be an elephant in the room that never gets pointed out. Ask what's going on. Do they have a plan? All those questions. Do they have a plan? How long have they been thinking about it? Is this time? Because you
So
want
just
the whole goal.
directly, so Natisha, if I can get this correct, so just directly asking someone, are you suicidal? Have you thought about it? Have you tried it? Just
Yes.
straight out saying it, saying the
Yes.
S word, basically.
Yes.
That's safe to do.
It's safe to do. You're not gonna put the idea in their head. If it's there, it's there. And if it's not, 9 times out of 10, if you are asking the question, it's there.
Mm,
So don't feel like you're going to be wrong or you're going to offend the person. You're asking for a reason. And one thing that you're giving them is really a gift. You're allowing them to know that you see them,
mm,
which is
mm.
often one of those feelings that people who are suicidal have, is that they're not seen, they're not
That no one
heard, they're
cares.
not important.
Wow.
Yeah, no one
Mm,
cares. So when
mm,
you ask the question, you're already healing them in some ways that you even
mm.
asked the question in the first place. And the next thing is allow them to talk, and you gotta have time. Don't ask and then run away. You have
Right.
to ask and be willing to be a part of the answer. That's the other thing. You have to be willing to be a part of the answer, even if that is, I'm going to put you in the direction of who I believe can help you.
Right. Right. That is that is so helpful to know because I know that's a very sensitive subject and people are afraid to even bring it up because like you mentioned, oh, I might be putting the idea in their head. But if the idea is there, it's there. And it's so important that you just simply acknowledge people. People need to feel connected. People need to feel seen. Um, they need to feel as if someone else actually cares because a lot of
Yeah.
times when you're going through this um, cycle of this suicidal ideation, there is this element of isolation
Yeah.
um, that happens, and it can be very traumatic. So I'm really happy glad that you shared that. It's so important. Um, so I know a lot of times when you think about stress management, again, our focus here is about stress management and self-care. Um, and how we process our state of mind and our mental health is so important. I know in your book, and earlier I had posted the website to get more information. Natisha, you wrote this book. It's called Girl, Get Your Mind Right. Awesome, awesome
Yes.
book.
Thank
Definitely,
you.
it is a spiritually grounded book. And I just want to, I'm so glad that we did this show today because it really touches upon a lot of important matters. And really just kind of lastly, getting on this idea of state of mind, because how we manage stress has a lot to do with what our state of mind is, starting off. So I know in chapter 3, look, I bookmarked it and everything. So I'm going to ask
I
you,
got mine.
um, yes. so so you should start a book club. This is some good stuff. Um, so in chapter 3, it's titled "If You Don't Mind, It Still Matters." And I read here that let's see. The quote says, "It is common for all of us to feel sadness, loneliness, guilt, nervousness, or irritability now and again. However, turn the page. Depression may be emergent if we are experiencing this feeling for longer than about a week or two. It has been reported that 11% of Americans are currently being prescribed antidepressants. Women are disproportionately affected. Studies show that women are diagnosed at twice the rate of men. It should be noted that 1 of 8 women will be treated for depression in their lifetime. This statistic implies that if you think of at least 8 of the women in your life, one of them is likely suffering from depression. So this has been very kind of pervasive in our society. Again, that feeling of isolation easily can put someone in a state of depression very often. So especially if these feelings are lasting for longer than 2 weeks, you put here. So how does that kind of relate to our state of mind? Like, what really makes us more prone to actually becoming depressed? And what is that relation to our state
Well, first we have to way that there are some genetic components, and so
of mind?
you can be predisposed for depression, meaning that you're more susceptible to falling into that state than others. So there's that, but then you have for women this hormonal component as well. So the way that we respond emotionally has a lot to do with how we hold and respond and process emotions. But this is a spiritually grounded book, and there's a scripture that says, "Hope makes a heart deferred. Hope deferred makes the heart sick."
Mm-hmm.
So, what that really means is when you are repressing emotions, you get sick. So, when you're not talking, when you're not saying what needs to be said to who it needs to be said, when you're not honoring your own desires, your own truths, your own likes, when you are not acknowledging your own needs, then depression becomes a part of your life. And it's an emotion. And I say also that emotions are messages. They don't come just um, to harass you. They come as messengers trying to get you to pay attention. And so depression is for, in large in part, saying to the person who may be experiencing it, is there is something that you have not dealt with. There is something that you are not paying attention to or seeing in the proper perspective.
Right. So it's almost like a distortion of reality in a way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And how you're
Yes.
seeing things. Yeah, I think it's so important to address these issues. And one thing I like about Girl, Get Your Mind Right. I'm just going to show the book again. So Natasha is the author of this book. You can definitely get it at any of the you've got a website as well as a Facebook page. But really talking about the hard truth about our thinking and how that affects and manifests our mental well-being, which then manifests in how we behave and interact with others and how we kind of handle life situations. So when you have a state of mind of, a distorted state of mind, like you mentioned earlier, I mean, that affects the lens in which, and how you see the world and how
Right.
you interpret what's going on. So it's so important, this idea of a healthy mental state, this idea of self-care, which we talked about earlier. It's just so very important. So I've got resources up. Definitely want to show everyone that these will be available in the chat as this webcast is shared. I'm also going to show Natasha's Natasha, sorry, I'm messing up your name.
That's
um,
okay.
yes, your website. I know the girlgetyourmindright.info is where you can find out more about the book. I know you have a counseling center here in Southern Maryland, Rhema Counseling Services. So we definitely appreciate you coming out. Did you have any last words or nuggets of advice to share with our audience tonight?
uh, I just want to congratulate everyone on making it to today. I mean, it
Yes.
has been um, a year and a half almost of, well, not quite, but feels like, but over a year of just challenges that we never could have imagined. Um, and so, to everyone who is still here, you are a survivor. You know, you are a thriver. And so, knowing that you've had the skills and the grace to get to today, be confident that whatever challenge that you're facing right now, you have the energy, will to be able to get through it. You may need some more tools, you may need some new strategies, but you have takes to get there. Um, as I was telling Dr. Easy, I think yesterday, when I noticed like the last week or two, the more stress I have, which may be more obligations, more responsibilities, the more aggressive I have to be about my self care, the more aggressive I have to be about my mental health, because
Yes.
I have to counteract what's going on in my life. And so, if the pandemic hasn't taught us anything else, you know, I hope you can see that you can't just sit idly by and think that your mental health is going to be sustained. You have to get involved. You have to participate in your own mental health and your overall well-being, because your mental health affects everything.
Everything, yes. And it has to be intentional. You have to make it a priority and not feel guilty about self-care. You
Right.
know,
Right.
we throw that word around a lot, but it's so important. It really is. And
Yeah.
I'm a healthcare provider and I know the importance of this. And I have to remind myself, like,
Yes, we do. It's
yes, we
not
were just talking about it
selfish.
yesterday. Yeah,
It's not selfish. It's self-preservation.
there you go. That needs to be in quotes. It's not selfish, it's self-preservation.
Mm-hmm.
That is it. Well, thank you so much, Natasha. It has been a wonderful conversation. I'm really hoping our audience, um, you know, was able to get something out of this, some tidbits of information. I know I've even learned a couple of things, and I've been practicing medicine for years. But conversations like this, I'm always
Are great.
a lot more enlightened. I'm hoping that you can definitely do another one of these with me again. I'm
That would
a
be
big
awesome.
Yes, I'm a big proponent of holistic health. It's not just about your physical health. A lot of times we get so focused on that, but our well-being overall in all elements and all aspects of life. So thank you so much again to our audience. If you can, definitely
Yeah.
check out this book, Girl Get Your Mind Right by Miss
It's also
Natasha
on
Reid.
Amazon too.
And it's
I think
also
I
on Amazon. Yes, on Amazon, you can purchase this by Miss Natasha Reid. I have the website and the social media handles on the bottom there. So thanks again, my dear. It was truly a pleasure.
always, always.
All right. Have a good night, guys.